All right, we are recording. Let me admit this person and then let's go. All right, well, welcome everyone. I appreciate you all taking time out of your evening to join us for this evening's presentation with Mr. Zach Westerbeck. I do want to start out by just saying a special thanks to some of our sponsors who is helping us bring Zach to be able to present to our student body. Special thanks to RHA, so Residential Hall Association, to Student Voluntary Services, so SBS, to the Office of Student Life. I appreciate the support from OSL, and then Fraternity and Sorority Life, which is the area that I oversee at Ball State University within the Office of Student Life. So special thanks to FSL. And then within FSL, we have a couple councils that has financially helped support bring Zach as well too. So I just want to say a special thanks to the Panhellenic Association as well as the Interfraternity Council. So thanks to all those who financially support this initiative. We greatly appreciate your support in this initiative. And so a few months ago, we started talking about some mental health initiatives that we think is important. And so as we were looking at programming within our area, within student life, we identified that we wanted to do something around mental health. And about that same time frame, Zach had reached out to me. And so it was just kind of perfect timing to kind of move forward with this initiative with Zach and bring him to our campus to speak about mental health. What I love about Zach is he is no stranger to Indiana. He is a fellow Hoosier himself. Was born and raised in Lawrence North area, correct, Zach?
That's right.
Yeah, and then he is a Purdue graduate. We will not hold that against him, but he did go to Purdue, and that's where he received his bachelor's degree. He had, after graduating, moved to North Carolina, and that's when, he'll talk a little bit about his story here in a little bit, but kind of his venture and kind of where he's at now and what led him into this role as being a speaker, kind of started right out of college when he was in a professional job and started to have just some things that come up in his life and that has led him to where he's at now. But we're excited to have Zach. I don't want to give too much away about him and his story, but he will tell us a little bit about his experiences and what he's doing, the work he's doing. So Zach, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Chris. And just a quick thank you to you for the time that you spent talking to me, getting this set up. Obviously, a huge shout out to the organizations that put this together. And then a big thank you to everybody who took, looks like 30 participants who carved out time out of their lives to jump on and talk about such an important topic that is mental health. And I always like to start every program out with this one simple question that I feel is one of the most important questions that you can think about and address in your life. And that question is, why should you care about mental health? Why should you care? Why should this topic be important to you? And if you got an answer, I'm pulling up the chat right now because I like to moderate the chat while we do this. Go ahead. If you have an answer to that question, go ahead, pop it in the chat. This is going to be a really interactive program. I want you sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your perspectives. And so if you've got an answer, if you've got a why, go ahead, share it. Because from my perspective, when I was in college, when I was your age, I don't know if I would have had a good answer to that question. I myself wasn't dealing with any mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm, even thoughts of suicide. I didn't know anybody that was dealing with these challenges. And Purdue at that time period wasn't talking about mental health. And at a societal level, there wasn't a push to have these conversations. And so I could see how maybe as you're sitting on this webinar right now, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is my why? Why should I care about mental health? And what I've learned through my, we got an answer from Allison. I love it. I care about mental health because the well-being of myself and those around me includes mental wellness. Breaking the stigma around talking about mental health can literally save people's lives. Beautiful, beautiful response, Allison. We got prevention of suicide by Mihoko, and please tell me if I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, absolutely. Prevention of suicide. Good. Okay. Mahoko said I'm doing good. Okay, great. So absolutely. We've already got a couple of people that are plugged into their why. And what I've learned through my work in advocacy is that mental health, or brain health, as we'll talk about here in a second, is something that we all have, and it's something that we all need to care about. And I am so bold in that statement that I will tell you confidently that there are 3 types of people on this call right now. And Lauren, I'm going to get to your comment here in a second. I always want to acknowledge everybody who's participating in the chat. But that first group, and this is important, so pay attention, that first group are the individuals that are on the call right now that are experiencing some form of anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm, or thoughts of suicide. And they need to know that it's okay to feel those emotions, and that seeking help is the very best thing that you can do for yourself. The second group is those of you that at some point in your lifetime are going to experience those emotions. Again, whether that's stress, overwhelm, anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide. And the third group, again, paying attention, remember, let's keep up with the groups. The third group is those of you who are going to know somebody that is experiencing anxiety, stress, overwhelm, depression, thoughts of suicide, and you're going to need to know how to support them. But if you're still a little skeptical, I want you to consider these statistics. The CDC estimates, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 1 in 4 Americans over the age of 18 are going to experience some form of anxiety or depression this year. This year, which puts us at roughly, let's see, round up to 30, puts us roughly at 7, 8, right? People on this call right now are going to experience those emotions this year. And over the course of a lifetime, they estimate that that number is going to double to 50%. So 50% of Americans over the age of 18 are going to experience some form of anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm, or thoughts of suicide. And the CDC published a report in June that took a survey of over 5,000 young adults. And what they found is that of those respondents, 63% reported that this year they were experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression. And of that group, 1 in 4 reported having thoughts of suicide. So mental health, brain health is something that impacts all of us. Now, I want to see if you were paying attention. Let me know. Let's prove this out right now. Let me know, which category do you fall into? Are you category 1? Are you category 2? Are you category 3? And keep in mind, you might be, you could be a few. You could be 1, 2, and 3. You could be 1 and 3. You could just be 2. You could just be 1. But let's see if you were paying attention. Again, 1 is somebody who's experiencing those emotions right now, which, look, I'm a mental health advocate. It doesn't make me immune from feeling these emotions. I'll put 1, 2, and 3, because for me, Lauren said 1. Thank you, Lauren. That's incredible. And let's read some of these comments too. Lauren said, from the perspective of someone who suffers from anxiety, I or nobody else should be consumed of remorse for past mistakes. This is where much of my, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that word right. I'm just going to say anxiety comes from, and my nocturnal anxiety comes from my thoughts about nightmares, creatures in spite of my age. Absolutely, 100%. Anxiety can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Thank you so much for sharing, Lauren. Erica said it has a huge effect on people's everyday life. Absolutely. And as somebody who lives with those emotions, I can tell you that it does have a huge impact on your life. Caitlin says, I care about mental health because it impacts so many people in so many different ways, and we should make people comfortable in coming forward about it. Couldn't say it better myself. That's why I got into this line of work. And then Christian said, I care about mental health because it affects the people around me and people who really do care about our well-being. And it affects all aspects of my life. Couldn't have said it better myself, Christian. Thank you so much for sharing. And as you can see here, look at this. 1s, 2s, 3s. So in real time, just opened up a door to an entire new conversation. Look how many 1s we have on here. Drew, Nick, Aaron, Paige, and Anthony said that they were a 2. Michael's a 1 and a 3. Lauren said she's a 1. I put 1, 2, and 3 as well. And what I've learned through my journey is that we are all going to fall into one of these 3 buckets, and a lot of times into all of them. And I know this because in 2016, I experienced symptoms of severe anxiety, deep depression, and thoughts of suicide. And it wasn't until I hit my rock bottom moment and started my journey to recovery that I learned just how important mental health is. And I so appreciate the openness already with this group. And so today, what my big ask is going to be, and we're going to dive into the agenda here in a second, is that I need you all to be the generation that smashes the stigma. I'm already seeing some of that energy and that momentum in the chat right now, but I need that from everybody on this call to be bought in, all the way in, on being open to a conversation around mental health and then going out there and smashing the stigma. You need to be the generation that normalizes it, makes it normal to talk about anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, so that people get the help that they need and we can live fulfilling and rich lives. And so today our agenda is going to be really centered around 4 categories. And sorry, I'm just moving the chat over. I like to get it to this side of the PowerPoint. So first off, we're going to debunk mental health myths. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to have mental health or brain health, as I'll talk about here in a second. We're going to dive into the signs and symptoms of anxiety and depression. We're going to talk about how to communicate to promote help-seeking behavior. And then we're going to talk about 5 actions that you can take right now, as soon as we get off of this webinar, to protect your mental wellness. But first, a couple announcements. The first of which is I have a book out on Amazon called You're Not Alone. And it is a book for 18 to 24-year-olds. It's a mental health guide, and it's all of the information that I wish I would have known, that I would have read when I was your age, to overcome anxiety and depression. And so at any point, if you want to look that up, you can find that book on Amazon. All you have to do is search You're Not Alone. It'll pop up right at the top. Or you can find it in the link in my bio on my Instagram, which leads to my next 2 updates. The first of which is I'm doing a $25 gift card giveaway, but there's a couple caveats. I'm giving it away to the most engaged participant. So the person who is sharing the most of their ideas and their concepts in the chat, as well as coming on and off mute when appropriate to share their ideas. But you also need to have your video on to be a participant. I want to be able to see you. I want to feel connected to you. If I was in person, I'd be able to see you. We could connect. And then the other caveat is you need to follow me on @Zach_Westerbeck on Instagram, and I'll follow back. You can ask any university I work with. I always follow the students back. I want to stay connected with you through the process. If you do those things, you qualify for the $25 Amazon gift card. The other update I want to give you is that I'm going to be transitioning from using the words mental health to brain health. And the reason why I do that is I use the term brain health as a destigmatizing tool. The same way that we think about our heart health as heart health and not soul health, is the same way that we need to start thinking about our brains. Our hearts are a tangible organ, and there are actions that we can take every single day to improve the health of them, to prevent heart disease. Well, that's the same exact thing with our brains. There are actions that we can take to take care of our brains and optimize them, get the most out of them, right? And the brain is a tangible organ in our body and arguably the most important. So with that in mind, I will be using the words brain health moving forward. Now, you might be wondering at this point, how did I get here? And Chris kind of alluded to it. I alluded to it a little bit, but my path to advocacy was very unintended. I graduated from Purdue University, and by the way, I'm loving it here. I've got a couple folks who have turned on their video. So keep in mind, that's the only way you qualify for the gift card. So just remember that, but also want you participating in the chat. So thank you. It's great. Love to see it. People flipping it on. We don't need to look like celebrities right now. It's all good. Come as you are. Come as you are. So how did I get here? Well, I graduated from Purdue University in 2014 with a degree in economics, just to give you an idea of kind of where my mind was at that time. And I moved from Indianapolis, Indiana, down to Raleigh, North Carolina to start my career working for the tech giant Cisco Systems. I thought I was going to go into the tech world. And I was going to be in this early in career program, and we were going to learn everything there was to learn about Cisco. And so for the first 8-9 months of this program, things were amazing. But right at around the 10-month mark, things started to change with my brain. And all of a sudden, I was waking up with what felt like sweaty palms, a dry mouth, racing thoughts, and a pounding heart. And I'd never felt any of these emotions before. And I want you to picture, imagine a beehive. And imagine somebody coming up to that beehive and smacking it. I don't know, have you all seen that video circulating on social media, on Instagram, of the guy who goes up to the beehive and hits it with the oar and gets absolutely swarmed by bees? If you've seen that, throw it in the chat. But that's the best way that I could describe how my brain was operating at that time. My thoughts were flying in a million different directions, and I didn't know how to calm myself down. I was 22 years old. I'm a 10-hour drive from home, and I have absolutely no clue what's unfolding in my brain. And so 2016 was right around the corner. I'm a sucker for New Year's resolutions, and I decided, you know what? I am going to fix this myself. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go to work. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to sit in the steam room. I'm going to sweat out all the toxins from 4 years at Purdue. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm just going to rid my brain of whatever has flipped it. Because in all of my infinite wisdom, I thought my brain was just like a light switch, and that it had flipped on, it was operating in this new way, and all I had to do was flip it back. In January of 2016, and I did get results. The only challenge that it wasn't the results that I was expecting. Not only had the symptoms that I told first that I now know is, but a emotion had crept in, and that was depression. Now, please, if you've ever felt who's experienced depression, type yes into the chat right now. So, I want a feeling for your understanding. It says yes, Paige, yes, Marissa, yes, Maggie, yes, Erica, Drew, so many yeses, Allison, Cameron, look at that. I think so. That's great. Learn through this process. So maybe about the signs and symptoms, that'll become more clear, either a yes or a no. Nick says yep, right? So, and this is what I always never wish it on my worst enemy. It sucks the joy out of everything. And just like an Instagram filter, the we use on our stories and our pictures, it was like my world had been, and everything that I once had gone. It felt like I had bricks on my feet. And the hardest thing in the world to do every single day was get out of bed and just get dressed for work. And so in a matter of a couple months, my world has been turned upside down. I've gone from this happy-go-lucky guy to this now severely anxious, deeply depressed individual who has absolutely no clue why this is happening to him. And so I go into full-blown panic mode. And I start scrambling, trying to figure out what is going on with my brain. And during this time period, I started doing what I like to call Zach's home remedies. And basically what this means is I was trying out different workouts. I was going to bed at different times. I was changing different foods in and out. I wasn't drinking coffee. I was only drinking tea. I was trying all these different things to just split my brain back. And I was doing two things really, really well during this time period. The first of which is I was hiding from the outside world what was going on internally. To the outside world, it looked like I had it all. I had the job. I was starting to talk to a girl who is now my fiance. I was working out. I was traveling. I had roommates and friends down in Raleigh. The other thing that I was doing really well is that I was denying to myself how quickly my brain health was deteriorating. And at the peak of my dark moment, I was having thoughts of suicide from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed. So this was getting dressed and going to work. This was driving in rush hour traffic. This was sitting in meetings, pretending to care about what people were talking about in the meetings while I was struggling on the inside just to get by. This was coming home and sitting on the couch and trying to watch a TV show with my roommates, and then finally getting to rest my head on my pillow at night and just praying that I fell asleep quickly to escape my brain. And it was exhausting because I just wanted to feel normal, you know, and we'll talk about what does normal even mean, but I wanted to be normal, feel normal again. And it wasn't until I hit that rock bottom moment where I seriously considered suicide as a viable option that I realized that I needed to reach out to somebody before it was too late. That everything I was trying wasn't working, and that if I continued down this path, I didn't see a way out. And so I called my parents in total tears, crying to them, and told them I was severely anxious, I was deeply depressed, and I was having thoughts of suicide, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember there was this long pause on the other end of the phone. And I have to imagine they were thinking about what to say to me, and also grappling with the fact that their son was saying that he was anxious, depressed, and suicidal. Like, how did our son get to this point? And they told me, they said, Zach, this is outside of our wheelhouse. We don't know what's going on with you, but we just know that you need to get help. And that little bit of permission is what I needed to set me on my path to recovery. And of course, I didn't know this at the time, but it was that little step that I needed, that little nudge to get on my path to recovery. And the very next day, I scheduled my first appointment with a therapist. And although she wasn't the person that I ended with or that could help me, she did set me on my journey to find the person who inevitably knew what was going on. And in late 2016, I was diagnosed with a chronic brain disorder known as obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, where the core symptoms are severe anxiety, deep depression, and thoughts of suicide. This brain disorder impacts 1% of the world's population. So we're talking about millions of people who suffer in silence, and like myself, were ashamed of the diagnosis. And it took me many years of talk therapy and lifestyle changes to begin my journey of recovery. But what I learned through that process, and what took me so long to recover, is the perspective that I had about mental health. And so I want to take a second here, and I want to ask you all a question. What are some of the perspectives that you've heard as it pertains to mental health? And we're going to fill this slide out together. And I want you to share with me, what are some perspectives that you've heard as it pertains to mental health? And a few that I've thought about, that I put up this morning are: you'll get over it in time. Try thinking happy thoughts. Caitlin said, change your attitude. Absolutely. Allison said, pull yourself up by your, wow, I love that one. That's a great one, Allison. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Catherine said, you just aren't trying hard enough. Absolutely. Other people, Anthony said, other people have it worse. Oh my goodness. And did I do that one to myself or what? All the time looking around saying, why do you think you can feel this way, Zach? Other people have it way worse than you. That's a great one. Aaron said, it'll be okay. Absolutely. And thinking that somebody telling you it'll be okay, that, oh, miraculously, I just feel fine now. Just stop thinking that way, Maggie said. Man, the interaction here is fantastic. Good job, y'all. Bree said, you just want attention. Minimizing how somebody feels, downplaying, delegitimizing symptoms of anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm. Paige said, live a healthier lifestyle. Right. Live a healthier lifestyle. Easy for me to type. Healthier lifestyle. Absolutely, Paige. Christian said, I know, man. And this one's a dagger. You're weak-minded. Which reminds me of the time I heard somebody call someone a mental midget. You're just using it as a crutch, Catherine says. Excellent participation. Good job. And this is a great list. So what do we notice when we see all these phrases? What do we notice? I certainly noticed some some themes here, but what do you see? When you see these, what do you see? All negative. That's right, Michael. Paige said they're negative. Lauren wants to share. Lauren?
Things not to say to someone who suffers from mental health issues.
Absolutely. Things that we shouldn't say to those that struggle with anxiety, depression, right? Thoughts of suicide, things that aren't helpful. Allison says they're all invalidating. Thank you so much for sharing, by the way, Lauren. That was great. Mihoko says judgment, 100%, casting judgment on individuals. So we know this group, I can tell this group is plugged in. You all get it that these perspectives are negative. They delegitimize, they invalidate how somebody's feeling. And overall, they make somebody feel lesser than for struggling with those types of emotions. And what we see here is that really underlying all of those comments is two types of stigmas. We've got the social stigma and then the self-stigma. On a societal level, there's still this idea that feeling emotions of anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide are negative, that it takes that it's a weaker individual that feels those emotions, or that we need to hide when we're feeling those emotions from other people, and that we just need to push through, right? That we just need to be stronger, that we need to quit making excuses. And what's dangerous about that is that that feeds into the self-stigma, where individuals begin to feel guilty and ashamed for feeling these emotions, even when they don't want to. And these have some harmful effects. Oh, sorry about that. And these have some harmful effects, right? And as you can see, there's a couple that I pointed out, which is a reluctance to seek help and a belief you can't improve. But please pop something into the chat if it comes to mind for you that stands out the most on this slide that's also a harmful effect. But the reason why I wanted to point out a reluctance to seek help or a belief that you can't improve is that they feed each other. So at a societal level, and I'll get to your comment here in a second, Catherine, thank you so much for sharing. At a societal level, we have this reluctance to seek help out of fear of judgment, out of concern that we're going to be rejected by our friends and family, or that they're going to look at us differently. So we keep quiet. Maybe we're afraid of the financial impact, whether we're going to, when you get into the adult world, whether you might lose your job or not. At the school level, maybe you're afraid that they're going to send you home for a semester, whatever it might be. We have this reluctance to seek help. And because we never seek help, we never improve. Our symptoms never get better. And in most cases, they just kind of stay the same. And because we don't improve, we start to cultivate this belief that we can't improve. And that's the self-stigma, right? Believing that we're always going to feel this way, that there's nothing that we can do to improve our symptoms, that there's nothing that we can do to get on the right track. And because we cultivate this belief that we can't improve, we never seek help. And because we never seek help, we have a reluctance to seek help. So it feeds itself over and over and over again. And that's what allows the stigma to survive in our society. And Catherine said there is also this idea that if you look put together, then you can't be that bad off. There's this image of what a person with depression or anxiety is supposed to look like. And I couldn't agree with you more, Catherine. There's this stigma that the way that we carry ourselves, like I can't tell you the amount of times that people would tell me, I would have never guessed that you were dealing with anxiety and depression. You always have your little sports coat on with your button down at work. Like, how could you have felt those emotions? I'm like, it has nothing to do with the clothes that I wear. Do you have an hour and a half? We can sit down and do the workshop. But the reality is that the clothes we wear, the food we eat, all of these things can, in a lot of cases, help boost our self-esteem, which can improve our brain health over time. But it doesn't make us exempt from feeling emotions of anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide. And I thought that I was somebody that would never experience those emotions. So Catherine, absolutely great point, beautiful point. Continue to share. This is how we grow together as a group. And the challenge with my belief system is that I thought very, very narrowly about what it meant to have brain health. from my perspective, brain health equaled brain illness. Brain health equaled brain illness. But what does this mean? It meant, in my mind, that you were either mentally ill or you were mentally well. If you were mentally well, then it's like what Catherine said, you know, you dressed a certain way, you acted a certain way. Life was going to be great for you. You were going to get the jobs you wanted, the grades you wanted, the partner that you wanted, whatever it might be, the friends that you wanted. Life was going to be easy. But if you were mentally ill, oof, that was going to be a completely different story. Life was going to be hard for you. You were going to be looked at differently. You were going to not be able to have the same level of success as other individuals. And so you could imagine the dilemma that I found myself in after leaving the psychologist's office for the first time and receiving the diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder and being told that this was something that I was going to have for the rest of my life. But what I've learned through my journey is that I was looking at mental health, brain health, through a super narrow lens. Yes, brain disorders are a part of brain health, but they're only a tiny sliver. In reality, our brain health is on a continuum. And it's something that we're all going to fluctuate back and forth on based on different factors in our lives. And we can fluctuate on the continuum on a daily basis and minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. It's always constantly changing. And there's a lot of factors that contribute to that, like our genetics. Looking at our family tree, how many people know that cancer, diabetes, or heart disease run in their family right now? Say I or me. If you know that one of those illnesses runs in your family, let me know. Me, I, me, right? So we're taught to know that these types of illnesses can run in our families, but we're not always taught about the fact that on one side of my family, there's a whole lineage of people that have struggled and suffered from OCD, right? Because it's not talked about. We need to think about the daily stresses. What are we putting ourselves through on a daily basis? What are we going through on a daily basis that impact where we sit on the continuum? And what are the significant life events that we've been through? So when we think about taking care of our brains, ultimately what I realized is that all of us are just trying to be at peace and be content. And I know that now because when that peace of mind was stolen from me, it was the only thing I wanted back. I just wanted to feel at peace again. I just wanted to feel content again. And really, when you think about that, it's all about cultivating a balanced life. And there are some things that I've put up here, like healthy relationships, right? Surrounding yourself by the right types of people and the right types of energy, maintaining your academics or your career, getting sufficient sleep, working on your physical health, doing things that you enjoy. But is there anything that stand out to you? Anything that you would add that you believe makes up living a balanced life? Meditate. Caitlin is on it. Mihoko said meditate. That's beautiful. Caitlin said journey. Oh, she said journaling. Oh, wait, what do we have? We've got, oh, my bad. I confused the two. My bad. Caitlin said journaling. Mihoko said meditating. Lauren said coloring. Absolutely. All of these wonderful activities to take care of our brains. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Drew said draw, doing something you enjoy. Aaron said puzzles. Christian said reaching out to somebody. Man, this is a really solid group. You all are plugged in. I appreciate every last one of you right now. All of these are fantastic examples. And by the way, these are going to help us fluctuate on the continuum to get us to a place where we're living a balanced life, which leads me to my next slide. The brain health continuum is impacted by and large by 5 categories. We've got everyday challenges, environmental challenges, significant events, brain health disorders, again, the genetics, and then learning disabilities, which again plays into the genetic side of things. From an everyday challenges standpoint, what I see that impacts the majority of students is stress and lack of sleep. Would you all agree with me? Like, do you think that those are kind of the two? I hear financial, a decent amount, poor body image, which oftentimes leads into low self-esteem. But what do you see as your biggest everyday challenge? Stress, Paige says. Absolutely. So let's talk about stress. Finding motivation. Absolutely. In the era of Zoom and quarantine, it is so hard, Caitlin, to find motivation. And so from my standpoint, literally everything. 100%. Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much for sharing it. That's real and raw, and I really appreciate that. Christian said keeping up with academics, which probably feeds into the stress. Finding motivation. Drama within friend group. Absolutely, Catherine. 100%, which gets back into healthy relationships, right? Making sure that the people we spend our time with lift our energy up and don't pull us down. So that's a wonderful point. Everybody's made great points. So when it comes to a stress point, we have to understand that there are two types of stress. There's good stress, positive stress, and then there's negative stress. Positive stress is the type of stress that motivates us to get a task done in the short term. So maybe you've got a project coming up, maybe you've got a test, maybe you have a paper that you have to write, a chapter of your book you need to get done, and there's a deadline to it. So you feel that little stress, but it's nothing too heavy. It motivates you to get the task done. But negative stress is when the stress hormone cortisol is released into the body and sustains a level above average over time, where we are constantly putting ourselves into a stress-induced environment. And when we're constantly putting ourselves into that environment, we open up the door to experiencing emotions of anxiety, of depression, and in some cases, thoughts of suicide. The other factor that plays into our everyday challenges and feed each other is lack of sleep. So quality sleep has actually been proven to reduce levels of stress in the body. But what's funny is high levels of stress typically lead to a lack of sleep, or we believe that we don't need sleep. For me, I literally cultivated the idea when I was in college that sleep was something that I could do when I was dead, that I needed to maximize every day. I could operate off of 3-4 hours, and that's all I needed. And I didn't learn until the real world that was significantly going to impact my brain health. From an environmental standpoint, any type of abuse is your brain health, whether it be verbal, sexual, physical. Media consumption, whether that be social media or watching the news, especially in a time period like what we've been through in 2020 between COVID-19, quarantine, the volatile political system, the elections, all of the racial injustice that's taken place. All of these can pay a toll on our brains and on our minds and create a degree of uncertainty. And our brains are hardwired for survival, and so they need certainty. And anytime there is some sort of disruption in our schedules or in our day-to-day, it's going to impact how we feel, and it's going to open us up to feelings of anxiety or depression. From a significant life event standpoint, death, divorce, breakups, major illnesses, job loss. For me, I'll put one in. I experienced my first breakup when I was in college, and it absolutely derailed me. It was the very first time I'd ever experienced depression and anxiety, but I didn't know what I was feeling, and I had nobody to talk to. Have any of you experienced some sort of significant event in 2020 or the last couple of years that you feel has shifted where you sit on the brain health continuum? And it's okay if you don't want to share. This is loss of family members. Thank you, Michael. That's real. Anthony said family loss, 100%. So we're all starting to experience biological dad reaching out after 20 years. Thank you, Caitlin. Lauren said breakup, loss of a pet. Absolutely. Allison, loss of family and friends. So again, look at the chat. Look how many of us are going through something right now. Christian said, parents finalized divorce. And that can be so challenging, so upsetting. We lost a family pet, Catherine said. Alyssa pointed up, I don't know if she was saying that for Christians or for Catherine's, but regardless, it's one of those two. Aaron said, dad sharing honest opinion on my sexuality. Absolutely, Aaron. And that can be so challenging, right? to feel, and again, I don't know what your dad's honest opinion was, but I'm making an assumption, which you should never do, that maybe he didn't share an uplifting an opinion. Maybe he wasn't as supportive as you would have liked to have seen. Alyssa says, Christian, thank you for your honesty. Alyssa says, absolutely. Conflicting political views with my family. 100%, Catherine, something I'm experiencing as well, and trying to navigate that, right? And still maintaining a healthy relationship with them, getting back to living that balanced life. So this is incredible. I mean, take a second and take this in and look how many people are sharing what they're going through. And just remember, this is a mini lesson for this slide, is just remembering we never know what somebody's going through. So always be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, right? So just always be kind. And then we've got brain health disorders and learning disabilities. And so, somebody might be experiencing the onset of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, OCD, schizophrenia, eating disorders for the very first time. And they're trying to figure out how to navigate that. So let's draw our attention down here to the brain health continuum. And let's use me as an example. If our brain health was fixed, you're either mentally well or mentally ill, then one might believe that I would spend all my time down here or down here, right? Especially if I was plugged in on an old belief system where I was just never going to be able to balance, to have that balanced life, or I was going to always need constant assistance. Well, if that were true, then that's where I would be. But the reality is that I really spend a large portion of my life now in these categories, where sometimes I'm living a really balanced life, y'all. I'm doing great. And then there's other times where I genuinely need help to balance. And in the spirit of transparency and breaking down and smashing the stigma, lately I've needed help to balance. I'm a mental health advocate, but that doesn't make me immune from feelings of anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm. This has been a really, really stressful time period. And so when I first started to experience the onset of my brain disorder, I went from difficult to balance to needing constant assistance to balance very quickly. And at my lowest point, I was not able to balance. But once I sought the appropriate therapy, the therapy that was specific to OCD, and I started committing to that therapy, I was able to start inching my way back to closer to over here, where I spend my time now. And so I'm curious, where do you think you fall on the brain health continuum right now? If you, in the spirit of transparency, for me, I'll tell you where I am right now. Lately, I've needed help to balance. Now, this work gives me life and it brings so much joy. But for me, I've been struggling with my anxiety more than I have in a while. I've even been battling with some feelings of depression, some stress, some overwhelm. What about you? Where do you sit? We've got some difficult to balance. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Caitlin. Is it possible to feel like it constantly changes, like you are never one? Absolutely, Alyssa. Fantastic question. I'll give you a perfect example. Earlier today, I was probably, to use the pen, probably somewhere right here. Now, after I did the things that I know I need to do to take care of my brain, I'm closer to over here. And that was a change in a 2-hour time shift. So absolutely, that's a beautiful question. That's why I say you could shift by the minute. And that's just being a human being. So we've got, Aaron says difficult to balance, patience difficult to balance. So all of us, Nick says not able to balance. Thank you for sharing. Once again, Nick being very vulnerable. That is you. If we were all there in the same place, it'd give you a round of applause right now. But where you're at continuum is so important because it helps in your next decision, which is always to seek help. And we're gonna do that here in a second. Christian said, did balance, not able to balance, 100%. So you bounced around, right? You've bounced around. It's kind of that roller coaster of emotions that we are all going to feel and experience at some point in our lifetime. So very, very great real world example. But let's use an example that we all can relate to with our physical health. Has anybody here ever broken a bone and been put in a cast? Just say I or me in the chat, and then just say what bone it was or what you broke. Cameron says me, wrist. Okay, absolutely. So we'll roll with Cameron. So Cameron broke his wrist. Now I imagine when you broke your wrist, Cameron, that you immediately knew something was up and that you needed to go do something about your wrist. Is that true? Did you know something was wrong pretty quickly? Yep. And then did you go to a doctor right away? Oh, you waited. Did you eventually go? There you go. Okay. So he eventually went. So maybe not at first, but eventually he went to go get his wrist checked out. And that's the thing, is when it comes to our physical health, we know right away when something's wrong, and we are all programmed to go do something about it. And when you look at this slide here and you look at this flow chart, when it comes to our physical health, whether it be an illness or an injury, we know, okay, if I break my wrist, if something happens to me, if I come down with a cough or a cold, I can go get professional assistance, get a diagnosis, and get put on a recovery plan. We know it. It's automatic. We've been taught that from day one. But when it comes to our brain health, whether we're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, experiencing thoughts of suicide, the process doesn't always look the same, does it? Because if the process were the same, we would experience those emotions, we would recognize them for what they were, and we would go seek professional assistance, we would get a diagnosis, and we would get put on a recovery plan. But what we realize when we look at these two flowcharts is that the big difference between the two is the stigma. And if we were able to remove the self-stigma, if we were able to see that our brain health was just as important, if not more important, than our physical health, and that it deserved the same level of attention and treatment, and that taking care of our emotional well-being was just as important as taking care of any physical injury, then we would recognize that they were on the same playing field, that it was the exact same process. And so that's why we want to remove the stigma and smash the stigma on the culture at Ball State. And what studies have shown is that early treatment leads to faster recovery. So the sooner that we go and seek help for what we're feeling, the faster that we can get on track to recovery. And on average, somebody who is struggling with OCD will wait 14 years to seek the help that they need. 14 years of struggling with those symptoms in silence and in secrecy to get the help that they need, which is oftentimes why it takes so long to recover. So now I want to talk to you all about the signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety. Now, when we think about depression, the clinical definition is sadness that lingers, intensifies, and persists over a 2-week period. And so what that means is if we all feel sadness. That is just part of the human condition. So if you feel sadness and you feel sad for a few days and then it goes away and you start to feel other emotions, probably a sign that you're not dealing with depression. But if you start to feel sadness that's lingering, intensifying, and persisting over a period that lasts any time longer than 2 weeks, this could be an indication that you are dealing with depression. And it's important to keep in mind that this isn't something that you can just shoulder through, right? In most cases, it's not just something that you can get over in time. It's something that you need to address. So when we're looking for the signs and symptoms from an emotional standpoint, that biggest indicator is sadness. But I'm wondering, are there any others that are standing out to you in the emotions category? Maybe anything you've felt yourself or you've heard a friend report to you, a family member. Caitlin says guilt. Caitlin's on fire today. Catherine said mood swings for sure. Absolutely. Aaron said anger, 100%. Paige said mood swings. Absolutely, right? So depression can manifest itself in outbursts of anger, right? Frustration. For me, there was just this underlying frustration of always feeling sad and just wanting to feel something different. Nick said literally all of the above. Absolutely. Another one that I hear a lot of is lack of emotional responsiveness, where somebody feels numb, like they can't feel anything at all, or they feel like they're in a zombie-like state. Guilt is also a really, really common emotion where we feel guilty for feeling depressed. And it's important to understand that depression is actually creating that symptom of guilt, not the other way around. We should never feel guilty for feeling depression. The depression is creating that feeling inside of us. Now, Allison jumped over to the physical side, which I love, and she talked about fatigue. So it's very common for somebody who's dealing with depression to report feeling tired all the time, to feeling like they don't have any energy. Maybe they report that they're in a brain fog, right? That they can't think clearly. And if we're looking for behaviors, we want to look to see if somebody's sleeping too much or too little, right? Maybe you've got a friend who's sleeping from 9 p.m. until 3 p.m. the next day, and they've been doing that for the last couple of weeks. And they report that it's the hardest thing in the world to get out of bed. Or the moment they wake up, they just feel like going back to sleep. I know that was the case for me. That and emotional fatigue. Sorry for not clarifying. All good. Absolutely, Allison. You're so spot on. Headaches, right? That's another sign. From a behavioral standpoint, withdrawal from others. People who are depressed oftentimes they socially withdraw. And it's an interesting time period to be in 2020 where we are being forced to quarantine, right? So it's easier for people who might be dealing with depression to withdraw from others or self-isolate. But what studies have shown is that self-isolation actually leads to the increase in depression. So if you or somebody you know is experiencing feelings of depression, we want to, as hard as it might be for that person or for you, we want them to get into a social setting, into a social environment, even if it's just with you, just with one other person, to interact with somebody socially, to release the chemical oxytocin, which is a feel-good chemical for the brain. So we want to make sure that people aren't self-isolating. And then from a thought standpoint, self-blame, worry, pessimism, and thoughts of suicide are all signs of depression. From an anxiety standpoint, the big ones that I always like to point out are pounding heart and chest pain. A rapid heartbeat too, right? Which I think they're kind of the same thing, but more or less, when we think about anxiety, our body and our brains were built in a beautiful way to help us survive. And the fight or flight system is the system that we've been using since the beginning of time to help us either prepare for battle or prepare to get away from a threat. The challenge with anxiety is that sometimes this fight or flight system is turned up a notch. And we can feel anxiety and depression either very easily, or we can feel those emotions for what feels like no reason at all. Like we can't really point to why we're feeling anxious. We just do. And like it might not even be in a setting that you would normally feel anxious in. Like I'll give you an example. I can just be sitting on the couch watching a TV show with my fiance and just be anxious, just be having the pounding heart and not really be able to point to anything. And that's because I live with a diagnosable brain disorder that is an anxiety disorder. And it's just a part of my day to day. And again, it fluctuates back and forth on the continuum as far as how intense I feel that anxiety, but that's just a normal part of my everyday. Are there any that stand out to you on here? You know, for me, the mind racing from a psychological standpoint is a big one. Feeling on edge, just not being able to relax, feeling irritable. You might feel dizziness. Caitlin, again, with a great answer, said rapid heartbeat. Caitlin, you might be the front runner for this gift card unless somebody comes running after you. Catherine said, ooh, Catherine is a close second, I will have to say. Paige is doing good too. I love it. Worrying and avoidance of situations. Absolutely. Aaron's killing it. Restlessness, irritability. Tingling. Tingling is another one. Like I remembered feeling tingling going down my left arm and thinking I was getting ready to have a heart attack. Turns out it was just anxiety. That's all it was. Now I never want to take away if you feel that you're having heart challenges, you should definitely go see a cardiovascular doctor. But it also could be anxiety, avoiding situations, excessive behavior, 100% Christian. And that's the same thing with depression, with anxiety. You might have anxiety about being in social settings, so you avoid them, or you're fearful that you'll make a mistake in a social setting, or just having obsessive behaviors like Christian talked about. So these are all the signs and symptoms of anxiety. So I want to teach you guys this phrase, and I think it's, for me, been one of the most important parts of my recovery, and that is, this too shall pass. Oftentimes when we're feeling really, really anxious, or we're feeling really, really depressed, it can feel like those emotions are going to last forever. And in the spirit of transparency, just a couple days ago, I was laying on the couch, heart pounding through my chest, experiencing the creeping in of feelings of depression, and feeling like, not again. What am I going to do? Is this going to last forever? Because if this lasts forever, this is not what I signed up for. But then I remember this phrase, this too shall pass. Basically meaning that everything in our lives is always changing. Change is one of the only constants in life. And it's one of the most important things that we could become aware of. Think about all the change that's taken place in your life just alone in 2020, between 2019 and 2020. And pop something in the chat if you can think of something, anything that's changed in your life. Paige says, my mom always says the same exact quote to me if I'm feeling down or have a bad day. And you know what, Paige? I love that your mom does that, because sometimes we need to be reminded that, if we do the right things, right, things won't always change if we don't take the actions necessary to make that change occur. But if we do the right things to take care of our brains, this too shall pass. And I can tell you dozens and dozens of stories where I thought my feelings were going to stay the same forever. And then I wake up after a solid night's sleep, some therapy, some meditation, some physical exercise, and I feel like a different person. So if you find yourself in that severely anxious spot, if you find yourself in that deeply depressed spot, if you find yourself feeling hopeless, just remember, this too shall pass. Everything in life is always changing. Take care of yourselves, take the necessary actions, seek the help that you need, and have confidence that this too shall pass. And Maggie said, this too shall pass is also one of the only things to help me through panic or anxiety attacks. I love that, Maggie. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. Just that little reminder that you're not going to feel this way forever gives us the confidence and the strength to go and do something about it, to take care of ourselves, because we deserve it. And it's something that I wish somebody would have told me a long time ago. So I'm so glad to see that some of you already plugged in on this. Caitlin said, school has changed and seeing my family has changed because of COVID. Also, my job has changed a lot. Sometimes it is so hard to adjust. Absolutely. Learning to adjust on the fly. And these days, changes are happening almost on a daily basis, it feels like. I like to tell myself to breathe. Absolutely. Is one small task that is easy to focus on. I love that. Just a small win for the day. Just focusing on your breath. And we're going to talk a little bit about the power of our breath here in a little bit. So, Catherine, that was an excellent point. So let's play a quick game of fact or myth. Talking about suicide plants a new idea in the person who is struggling. For that reason, you should never bring it up. Fact or myth? We've got a bunch of myths. Good work. Absolutely. This is a spot on. You're right. It's a myth. Talking about suicide does not plant a new idea in somebody's head. If they are having thoughts of suicide, those thoughts are already populating in their brain. And what they want more than anything is to be able to go in a safe space and talk to somebody about what they're feeling. When I was dealing with feelings of suicide, but I still had this old belief system that I had to hold everything in, I wanted so desperately for my fiance or a best friend to call me and ask me if I was feeling depressed, if I was having thoughts of suicide, so I could just pour it out and tell somebody. So we want to actually give somebody a safe space to have those conversations. Fact or myth? If someone confides in you that they are feeling suicidal, but makes you promise you can't tell anyone, you need to keep your promise. Fact or myth? Myth, myth, myth. A bunch of myths again. Absolutely. 100%. This is a myth. Look, we all want to be great friends. We all want to be there for our people, and we want to build trust. And one of the ways that you build trust, right, as a human, is if somebody comes to you with a secret and tells you to keep it a secret, you do. But in the case of suicide, we want to be proactive. So if somebody comes to us and says that they're feeling suicidal, we want to take the necessary actions to support them, to ensure that they get help. And that starts by lending a listening ear. And we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but we never want to keep it a secret. We want to get buy-in from the stakeholders that are invested in that individual's life, and then work systematically to get them to seek help with a therapist, with a professional in the brain health space, so that they can recover. And I think it's important to note here that you can never force somebody into therapy unless they're in crisis and showing signs that they're trying to hurt themselves. Otherwise, all we can do is gently nudge and encourage through our own actions that going to a therapist is a normal thing. It's something that we should all be doing. If a friend tells you that they are feeling suicidal, you should get very serious and tell them that they need to get help, or you're calling 911. True or myth? Fact or myth? We got some facts, 3 facts, a myth. See if anything else comes in. So this one's kind of tricky. This is actually a myth, but I can see why a lot of you would think it is a fact, because we do want to take suicide seriously. We don't want to downplay it. So if that's where your head was at, I completely agree with you. Suicide is a very serious topic and something that we should take seriously and never downplay. But when it comes to one of our friends saying that they are feeling suicidal, we don't want to match that energy with more panic. The likelihood that that individual is already feeling maybe slightly unstable, self-conscious, fearful of how others are going to react to them saying they're feeling suicidal is probably pretty high. And so what we actually want to do is create, but going authoritarian on them, yeah, absolutely, Nick, 100%. What we really want to do is we want to create a safe space, a comfortable place where they feel comfortable opening up about their suicidal thoughts, what they're feeling, what they're going through, and then gently steering them in the direction of seeking help. Because if we just get really, really serious and then threaten to call 911 if they don't get help, that's going to put them on edge. That might force them to do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. And at a bare minimum, it might make it so that they never want to open up to you about something again. And if they are still experiencing thoughts of suicide, they might just not tell you now. And that's when a crisis could happen on campus. So we want to keep things calm. We want to meet them with calm, normalized energy. So what are the signs that someone is feeling suicidal? Well, there's a few that I've highlighted. One of the big ones that you can see in a collegiate setting is an increase in drug or alcohol use. If all of a sudden you have a friend who you've seen them for the last 3 weeks and they are drunk every single day, and they're drunk at times in the day when nobody else is drinking, or they're drinking by themselves a lot, or maybe they're high 24/7, or they're starting to take pills or whatever it might be. This could be a sign that they are trying to escape from emotions that they no longer want to feel, and they're either not aware of it themselves, or they are just trying to suppress what they're going through the use of substances. So we want to look for that increase in substance use. If somebody says something around the realm of having no reason for living, and this could just be something as simple as saying like, oh, I don't really see the point in life anymore. What's the point in living? Like, life is so hard. Like, or saying something like, well, maybe people wouldn't even miss me if I was gone. Or saying something like, I'm not thinking about suicide, but like, if I wasn't here anymore, I might be okay with it. Right? These are all signs that, hey, maybe somebody is feeling suicidal. If they report deep levels of hopelessness or feeling trapped, Again, could be signs of feeling suicidal. And then lastly, if they have a detailed plan, it could even come across as I'm bored with life. Catherine, that's a great point. And especially in this time period now, where it's really hard to feel motivation, where every day feels exactly the same as the last. Somebody saying I'm bored with life could also mean that they're in a really dark place right now. They're having thoughts of suicide, but they just don't know how to articulate it. So that was a fantastic example. And if anybody else has an example they want to share, please put it in the chat. This helps all of us. But then the last thing, to get back to my final point, is that they have a detailed plan. So studies have shown that the more detailed a plan is, the more likely that that individual is to go out and try and attempt suicide, and the more likely that they are to actually complete it. So we want to communicate with them and have some proper keys to communication. The first two things, and the two things I highlighted the most, and Nick kind of talked about this, is we want to be non-judgmental and we want to listen first. So the idea here is that we want to create a space where the individual feels comfortable speaking about what they are feeling. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the person who is feeling anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide. They're going to naturally be in a more vulnerable space. They might be experiencing these emotions for the very first time, or maybe they're experiencing it for the 20th time and they're just wondering to themselves, what's wrong with me, right? Maybe an old stigma, an old belief system about why can't I just get over this? And so we want to be non-judgmental. We want them to know that it's okay for them to be feeling what they're feeling, that they can be comfortable in their own skin, that they can show up as who they are right now with you, and you're not going to judge them or chastise them for feeling those emotions. The next thing we want to do is we want to listen. I think so often as human beings, it's really common for us to want to tell somebody what to do, give them advice, tell them, oh, well, this is what you need to do. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody, when we were on the stigma page, talked about how sometimes people will tell you what you need to do to feel better. And in a lot of cases, it's not helpful. I mean, if you're a clinician, if you're somebody that went to school for brain health, then I think it's okay to listen still and then provide advice. But if you're not a clinician or somebody that is well versed in brain health, just lending a listening ear is enough to allow somebody to express what they're going through and lift some of that tension and heaviness that might be taking place in their bodies. And then we want to promote help-seeking behavior. So every single time that I'm in a conversation with somebody, I always end it by asking them if they've thought about seeking help, if they have, and if they haven't, if they've ever considered seeking help. Because ultimately, we want individuals to start to recognize that therapy, seeing a psychologist, seeing a psychiatrist is normal. And it's a normal part of being a human being. And as we know from a statistics standpoint, 63% of us are experiencing these types of emotions this year. The CDC estimates that that number is 50% over the course of a lifetime. So we want to promote help-seeking behavior. And then we can do things like display signs of compassion, and then we want to fact gather. So when we're displaying signs of compassion, you can say something as simple as, I care about you and I want to help. Or, hey, I'm in this with you. I want you to know that whatever you're going through, I'm going to help you get better. I want to see you get better. I don't know if anybody can think of anything else that comes to mind. I always like to get new ideas, fresh ideas. And then we want to fact gather. So we do want to ask the individual, are you thinking about suicide? Have you had thoughts of suicide? And let them know, hey, it's okay if you are. I just want to know because I want to make sure that I help you through the process. And I'm just trying to kind of gauge where you're at right now. Again, normalizing it, making it normal to have these types of conversations. And then we want to start to cultivate the idea that it's okay to not be okay. And what I mean by that is it's okay to feel a gamut of emotions. It was Paige or it was somebody earlier who was saying, is it normal? And I would scroll through the chat real quickly, but it's going to take me a second. Somebody was saying, is it normal to feel a lot of different emotions in a day? And the answer to that is absolutely 150%. I mean, myself alone have felt this today. I've felt this today. I've felt this today. You know, even at times I felt this, and this. All these emotions I felt today. And before the day is over, I might end up feeling them all. So go ahead and throw in the emoji that you've been feeling lately, or throw in all the ones that you think that you've felt over the last 24, 48 hours. And just know that it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. I was here a couple days ago, and I was okay with that because I know that, again, this too shall pass. I'm not always going to feel this way, but I need to do the things that I know will improve my brain health. So go ahead and throw an emoji as to where you're at right now. And above all else, I want you to know that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to do nothing about it. I love that. Thank you, Caitlin. That's great. Allison threw in the halfway fade, 100%. Absolutely. So it is normal to feel every type of emotion, and that's okay. But what's not okay is feeling those emotions and then not doing anything about it to take care of yourself. So excellent job again, everybody sharing, being vulnerable. This is incredible. Now let's talk about what are some of the actions that we can take to take care of ourselves. Well, above all else, and if I haven't drilled this message home yet, asking for professional help is always the first step. It is always the first step to recovery. It is the first step to overcoming feelings of anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm, thoughts of suicide. Now, why do you think I have a picture of shoes up? Bunch of shoes there in the middle. The reason why I have a picture with a bunch of shoes facing in the middle is that finding the right therapist can, in a lot of cases, be like finding the right pair of shoes, the shoes that fit just right. And we know that Nikes and Adidas just fit differently. They're not the same. They're made by two different shoe companies and they don't fit the same. And that is the same with any sort of healthcare provider, whether it be a general practitioner or a therapist. So remember, in your journey of finding the right healthcare provider, don't quit after your first try if you don't feel like you've connected with your therapist, or that your first therapist was the right try or the right fit. If I would have quit after my first attempt, I don't think I would be here speaking to you all now, because my first appointment with my first therapist didn't go well. And I went back to her a few times before I realized she was not the right fit. What her and I were working on and what we were trying to do was not what was going to make me better. And it wasn't until I found a therapist that specialized in OCD therapy, ERP, or exposure and response prevention is the talk therapy, that I started to get better. So when we think about finding the right professional help, we want to understand that it's like finding the right pair of shoes. You're looking for the right fit. And we want to think about connecting with that individual. Do we feel like we connect with them, that they want our recovery, that they have our best interest in mind? And do we feel like they have the ability, the capabilities, the training to help me with my specific set of challenges that I'm facing? And so you can always do a mental health assessment, and this could be as simple as getting out a piece of paper and jotting down your current symptoms. You know, what have you been feeling lately? What have your thoughts been? What have your behaviors been? What is your family history? Do you know that depression and anxiety run in your family? Have you been through any significant events? And a lot of us shared that on the chat today: a breakup, a death, uncertainty from a financial standpoint, job changing every single day. And then we want to think about the frequency of the symptoms and then how long we've been experiencing them. Again, remember, with depression, anything over a 2-week period could signify that you're experiencing depression. The next thing we want to do is we really want to start to take care of ourselves. And that begins at the foundational level with our sleep. And when you think about sleep, I want you to start thinking about your sleep as the most important thing that you are doing every single day, and scheduling your day around your sleep schedule versus scheduling your sleep around your day schedule. And just to take a poll, I want to see how many hours of sleep on average do you think you get a night? Maggie says 7. Aaron says 5 to 6. Student Life said 7. Paige said 6 to 8. 7-ish, 6. Okay. Okay. Ooh, Christian says 3. That's low, Christian. I used to be like that too. I was always exhausted. I appreciate you sharing that. Drew said 1. I've never been that low on average, but I can only imagine that must be exhausting, Drew. Erica, 5. So thank you so much for everybody sharing. So sleep is important because what studies are starting to come out and show, and they don't know why the brain needs sleep. Scientists still haven't figured that out. But we do know that it recharges our brains overnight. So I want you to think of a Tesla. A Tesla runs on a battery, and you can drive that Tesla for a certain amount of time before you have to plug it into a charging station, before it's going to be able to take you that next distance, before it's going to be able to go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, right? And have that performance and be able to use the touchpad and all the cool things that come with a Tesla. You're going to have to plug it in and charge it. Well, that's the same with our brains. And what studies have shown, especially for your age group should be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day. And anything under 7 drastically decreases your cognitive abilities. So your ability to learn, your ability to remember things, your ability to understand concepts, and it drastically decreases your ability to deal with things emotionally. So the daily stresses of life have a much higher chance of impacting you and derailing you and increasing feelings of stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and depression when you're not getting enough sleep. And one of the first things that started to improve my brain health symptoms after beginning therapy was recognizing and realizing how important sleep was and how I needed to be prioritizing sleep over anything else. And it's important to note that drinking substances late at night, like alcohol, like caffeine, like marijuana, cannabis, all of those are going to impact your quality of sleep, and it's going to deter you from falling into REM, which is the most important phase of sleep. Again, scientists don't know why, but that's where the brain really starts to recharge itself and come back fresh. So anything under 7 hours of sleep is when you start to see that cognitive decline, a susceptibility to stress, overwhelm, anxiety. And anything under 5 hours of sleep is when they say that the brain operates as if you were impaired, right? As if you had been drinking. So we really want to focus on sleep. What about too much sleep, Nick says. So Nick, that's a great question. If you think that you're getting too much sleep, if you're sleeping 12, 13 hours a day, could be a sign that you are struggling with depression and that you want to speak with 2 people. Number 1, a therapist. Number 2, a sleep hygienist, to begin to understand how too much sleep is impacting your life and why that might be occurring. So that's a great question. Those are the 2 types of people you'd want to meet with, a therapist and a sleep hygienist. But what studies have found is that sleep has a host of benefits. It lowers stress, if you remember from the continuum slide. More sleep means less stress. It means less inflammation in the body, improved memory, and then it's going to reduce that risk of depression. So everything that you do needs to revolve around getting quality sleep and recognizing that the substances that you put in your body are going to impact that quality sleep. The next thing we want to do is we use relaxation techniques. We live in a country that is capitalistic, is all about productivity, is obsessed with crushing goals, and all of those things, by the way, are a beautiful thing. They have a space and a place, and it's what makes this country one of the greatest countries on the face of the planet. But we need to start deliberately carving out time to relax. And one of the best forms of relaxation that brings true benefit to the brain and actually creates new neural pathways is meditation. Does anybody on here meditate? Just say yes if you do. And if you want to say what app you use or how you go about it. Caitlin says yes. Catherine says kind of. I need to. Aaron says try to. Christian says yes. So good. So we've got some people. Allison says yes. Oh, love that, Lauren. Great. Paige says yoga, which is similar. Absolutely. Right. Another mindfulness practice. The big distinction I want to make, though, between meditation and religion is that meditation is a science. And what I mean by that is that you can be a Christian or a Muslim or whatever religion you practice and still meditate. Because meditation is nothing more than the act of sitting and trying to focus on your breath. And that's it. And what studies have found is that through that process of focusing on your breath, you can replicate the same results over and over and over again in the forms of reduced stress, anxiety, and depression, an improvement in sleep, and an overall improvement in happiness and general well-being. And as somebody who's been meditating for over 5 years now, I've logged over 18,000 minutes to date. I meditate for only 10 minutes a day. And studies have shown that all you need is 10 minutes a day to reap the from meditating. And it kind of makes sense with our physical health. You have this to reap the benefits. You can't just go once and then be strong or fit the rest with our brains. In order to develop new neural pathways and to cultivate mindfulness, and again, replicate those results over and over again, because we have to do it on a daily basis. And the best way that I've been able to find consistency meditation is by showing up as the student and not the teacher. And so I'll put in the app that I use, but space, $9.99 for the entire year. And it's guided meditation. All you have to do is show up and sit there. And this right here, perspective, is the singular reason for therapy that I've recovered well beyond a lot of my peers that struggle with OCD-like symptoms. So I could be an advocate. And I really believe that it's because of meditation. So give it a shot, give it a try. Then we want to move our body. And obviously we got a guy here doing pull-ups, which I'm not a huge fan of pull-ups. I'm also not very good at them. So that, there might be a correlation there. But when we think about moving our bodies, it doesn't need to be an intense workout. I mean, if you want to go and really break a sweat, get that heart rate up, lift weights, that's a great thing because you're going to release endorphins in the body. And endorphins are a feel-good chemical for our brains. And in the short term, it does help boost mood and reduce feelings of depression, anxiety, and stress. But a walk, by the way, can do that exact same thing. So a walk outside for 10, 15, 20 minutes on a sunny day, either on campus or maybe you're back at home. So taking a walk with a friend or a family member is going to help you cope with your emotions on a daily basis. And it's going to help you, reduce those feelings of depression, anxiety, and stress, and also build a sense of community. My favorite way to get movement in my body every single day, because I do work out 3 to 4 times a week, but my favorite way to get movement every single day is by going on a walk with either my fiance or going on a walk and putting in AirPods and calling a friend. So getting movement in, walking for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and also connecting with somebody. And what I've found is that on the days where I don't move at all, I'm much more moody, I'm much more anxious, I tend to hold more stress in my body, and I don't get as quality of a night's sleep as I would if I had, gone out and gotten any sort of movement in at all. So if you're dealing with anxiety or depression right now and movement sounds like the hardest thing, you're like, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't feel like working out right now, but I would take a quick walk, start with that and just build from there. And lastly, we want to build a foolproof support system. And what I mean by this is building out a team of people around us that fill different roles in our lives. And I've got those laid out. But the main person that you need to start with is your rock. Can you think about who your rock is right now? The person that you can go to at any point in time and you can be yourself. You can talk to them about whatever you're struggling with and they're there for you to support you. If you can think of that person, put their name in the chat right now. Mom, absolutely. My mom or boyfriend. So that's the same for me. It's my mom or my fiance. My mom and sisters. Pretty much anyone in my support system. That's great, Lauren. That's great. All great answers. So thinking about who that person is, and if you're in that space right now where you need to talk to somebody, call up your rock. Have a conversation with them. Tell them about what you are feeling and just lay it all out there, because emotions are just like steam in a tea kettle. When you put a tea kettle on the stove, it starts to heat up the water, and that water turns into steam and has to be released. And if we don't release our emotions the same way that steam gets released through a tea kettle, it has a chance to build up in our bodies and manifest in a lot of different ways. And just by calling your rock or speaking to your rock in person and telling them, releasing that steam, releasing that tension, the emotions that you've been feeling, you give yourself the opportunity to hear yourself speak and then begin the process of healing. Now, if you're somebody right now who's thinking, I don't know who my rock is, I don't know if I have someone, Christian says, I don't think I have anyone, honestly, that's completely okay. That's okay to not know who your person is right now. But again, it gets back to that. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not do anything about it. This is your opportunity to slowly but surely go on that journey of discovery to find out who is your rock. Who is your rock? You know, can I go out and cultivate that best friend over time, remembering that relationships are something that take time and they take effort. And so if you're in that space right now where you don't know who your rock is, maybe you write down a short list of people that you think maybe could be your rock, and then schedule some time to hang out with them and just build some rapport with them. But also keeping in mind that if you're somebody that needs to get something off their chest and doesn't have that rock right now, you could always reach out to a professional, which you'll see is the second from the bottom. Reach out to that therapist, schedule an appointment. Don't feel like you need to hold in these emotions. Go speak to somebody about them. And there's no better way to get those emotions out than speaking to somebody that is a brain health professional that's gone to school for this type of work. So here are some resources for you. From Ball State's Counseling Center standpoint, they've got kind of two different options. They've got a Let's Talk option, and then they've got more of your traditional therapy. Has anybody gotten any telehealth services from Ball State's Counseling Center? That's great, Caitlin. Caitlin says, I've been to the office many times. Incredible. Beautiful. And right now, Ball State is offering all of their sessions via phone call or video conferencing. So there's nothing in person, but that's okay. Studies have shown that virtual therapy in most cases can be just as effective as anything in person. And so you can call the number that I've mentioned there. I don't know if you want to take a screenshot to go ahead and schedule your first appointment. It's on a first come, first serve basis. And they will basically decide whether you are in crisis or if you're somebody that they can schedule a few days out because there's just some things that you need to talk through. They have Zoom meetings and they are so impactful. Do not be afraid to reach out to them. Caitlin, that is great. Thank you so much for sharing that with the group. So then we have some other resources here. If you're feeling suicidal, again, that is completely fine. Call 1-800-273-8255. It's the suicide prevention hotline. They're not going to ship you off to jail or send you to a mental warden if you have. I've gotten people saying that that's what they're fearful of. They're going to refer you to resources in your local area to help you begin the process of recovery. You can also go to psychologytoday.com, type in your zip code, and it's going to populate a list of healthcare providers in your area. And you can filter it by the type of insurance you have, whether you want a male or a female therapist, what type of therapy you want to receive, how far you're willing to drive for that type of therapy. So it's a really, really effective tool. I myself used it, and it was how I found my OCD therapist when I was living in North Carolina. So for the sake of time, I know we're a couple minutes over. I'm going to skip this. I'm just going to remind you, if you are somebody that is dealing with anxiety or depression, my book is available. It's everything that I wish I would have known when I was your age. You can check that out for some helpful information. I know some of the initial readers, it's only been out for a month, but a lot of the initial students who have read it have found it extremely beneficial and really helpful. And then let's stay connected. Follow me on Instagram at Zach_Westerbeck. I will follow you back. I want to be connected. I want to be a part of this journey with you. I so much appreciate your openness and your vulnerability on today's session. So in order to qualify, you needed to be engaged in the chat as well as follow me on Instagram. And so I'll be looking for that correlation. I'm going to send you a gift card, a virtual gift card right away. And then the last announcement I want to make is that if you are feeling stuck, if you are looking for some customized college success coaching, you're looking to, maybe you're struggling with your grades, you're struggling with your social life, you're looking to overcome some mental health hurdles yourself, and you're looking for some extra guidance, I do offer a customized coaching program. So just reach out to me via Instagram, and we can talk a little bit about what you're experiencing and see if I'm a good fit for you or not. And then I'll leave you with this quote. Sometimes when you're in a dark place, it feels like you've been buried alive, but perhaps you've just been planted, and now is your opportunity to bloom. I'm so grateful for every last one of you. Thank you for everybody who shared their ideas and thoughts. And I look very much so forward to the next opportunity that we get to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach, so much for your information, for your content, for your engagement of our students tonight. I appreciate this. I know a lot of our students appreciated your message and your information. So thank you again for everything that you're able to provide us on. Again, can you go back to your social media? I want our students to know how they can get in touch with you, how they can follow you. You are a great resource for them and for our student body. So I just want them to know, again, how they can reach out to you. If they have any other questions or concerns for you, is there a way that you would like for them, if they do have more questions or any concerns that they would like to reach out? Is this the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, they can either direct message me on Instagram, or they can send me an email. Here's my email address. And I will always try to respond as fast as I can. I still live with anxiety and depression myself. So there are some days where I just have to, get to messages the next day, give myself a day to recover. So just know, if you message me, I will always respond. It might just take a couple of days.
Cool.
And I just want to thank everybody as well. Big thank you to everybody Paige, Aaron, Caitlin, Allison, Nick, Abby, Erica, Christian, thank you so much. Catherine, Lauren, I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you so much for being on, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you again, Zach. Thank you, students, for spending your time with us this evening. We greatly appreciate it. And be on the lookout for future programming from the Office of Student Life. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.